I'm here with Mr. Kent Hellman. You're the police officer here at the Verde Campus. One of them, there's two. So tell me, how did you start working here and how long ago?
Well, I started working for Yavapai College in 1996. Well, actually, I started working part-time in 1995. And then I started full-time in 1996.
Okay, so it's been 10 years almost?
Almost 12 years.
Almost 12 years.
This is my 12th year at Yavapai College.
And before that, what did you do? Did you work with the county or?
No, actually, my law enforcement, as far as certification, I got my certification through Yavapai College. They sent me through the police academy. When I first started at Yavapai College, they had security force, and they only had a couple of certified officers. And then shortly after I was accepted into a full-time position, they changed the situation at the college, and they wanted to go with a full law enforcement department type status, and so they sent me to the police academy to get my certification, which is also the same time Yavapai College started NARTA, which is Northern Arizona Regional Training Academy, which is the police academy for the Northern Arizona. And so I was in the second class of NARTA.
And as far as you remember, how has it changed, and what do you think is the most significant change in this campus, in the college?
Well, I started on the Prescott Campus when I first started working, so I can't speak a lot about this side of the mountain except from 1999, 2000 time period when I came over here from the Prescott side.
Which is 8 years ago or 9 years ago.
Yeah, so I've been here on this campus for 8-9 years.
And that was before this building was built?
It was before Building L was here, or Building M. When I came over here, they were working on an extension to Building G,
which is
where the computer lab
building, right?
Yeah, it's they added on the computer lab, and then they had the 2 computer classrooms and a couple of office spaces on the side. That was just under construction when I started working here. And then where Campus Safety's office is here on the Verde Valley Campus, that portion of that building wasn't in existence then either. So there's been a lot of changes. Of course, people like Tom Schumacher, Dieter Bartels, they can go back to the early days of the Verde Valley Campus because they've been here for a long time. But I've seen plenty of changes here on the Verde Campus, and I have to admit, I really like the Verde Campus. I like the people here on the Verde Campus. I think the atmosphere here is more of an attitude of cooperation, where the employees seem to have more of an attitude of what needs to be done, let's get it done, opposed to that's not my job.
And that's the attitude in Prescott, you're saying?
I don't want to say that, but I mean, say that point blank, but I will say that there is more of that type of behavior over there, but it's not an absolute standard over there. But I think there's less cooperation because the departments are all bigger, and everybody has more of an assigned job, and so whenever there's something to be accomplished, you say, well, whose job is that? And then they pass it off to that group, whatever it might be. Where over here, you might say, well, that's the facilities job. Well, in the evenings, facilities aren't here. There's nobody to call facilities, so who do they call? Well, campus police winds up switching hats, and now I work for facilities, and if that toilet's not, or just keeps running, I'll go over there and fiddle with it until I make it stop running, or if it overflows, I'll put the out of order sign on it. And if people if there's animal issues, snakes or something like that, I have to deal with that. It's just one of those things, we just kind of work together a bit more.
So was that why you transferred from Prescott over?
No, the reason there was originally facilities had the responsibility of providing security over here when the campus was smaller, and as Yavapai College switched over to a certified officer type law enforcement agency, they sought to have a certified officer over here on the Verde Valley Campus. And they had a position opened up here through a grant position. Basically, the federal government paid for, I don't know if it was the first year or they paid half and half. The college paid half up to a point, and then eventually the college took the position on full time. But originally it started off as a grant position. And the officer that they had hired over here, she moved on to another state, and so this position came available, and the chief from the Prescott side asked if I was interested in working over here on this side of the mountain. So I came over here a few times and learned the campus from the other officer before she had left, and found out that I really like the area, I like the community, I like the fact that it's still a smaller community. It seems to carry over into the campus itself in that it's just a smaller community type attitude, where that cooperative type behavior, I think, exists more when it's smaller.
And what do you think was the reason why Yavapai College wanted to get a certified officer? Do you think...
Well, there's a lot more authority associated with a certified officer. When you have a security guard, basically what you have, they don't have the powers to arrest, they can't carry guns. Basically all they are is somebody handling a key in a uniform. But with certified officers, when we see a crime, we have the powers to arrest. Whereas a security person has the same authority as any other citizen has, in that they could make a citizen's arrest if they knew what they were doing. So it gives them a lot more authority. It gives us jurisdiction over crimes that take place on the campus. So especially on the Prescott campus, where you have a lot of resident halls, and the resident halls just has a tendency to breed more problems because it's like a smaller community filled with a lot of young people. So you have a lot of things that happen. You get alcohol, you get some drugs, you get fighting, you get just a lot of little stuff that goes on. Whereas with a certified department, we can investigate these things. We're held responsible for accounting for all the crimes that take place on campus. And if all the officers are certified, they can take a reactive posture whenever there is a crime that takes place, and I think it just works better for the campus. It makes the campus safer.
Yeah, and I imagine that it inspires more respect as well, because if the students know that there's an officer on campus, they're going to be more careful about what they do, right?
Well, that's what I've seen. I think it definitely gives a different attitude towards the students, towards those that are providing the security. The attitude towards a security guard opposed to that of a police officer is different. The officer carries more respect simply because he has more authority that can affect their life. They're more willing to push somebody who doesn't really have much authority to correct a criminal behavior.
And how much do you have to actually enforce that authority that you have in this campus?
Well, on the Verde Valley Campus, I'm thankful we don't have a whole lot of crime that takes place over here. We don't have any resident halls, which is a big factor. And also on the Prescott campus, they have sports. They have soccer, softball, baseball, cross country, basketball. And with that comes a lot of athletes with, I don't want to say attitude, but there can be some attitudes. But it just brings a lot of young people into a mix, and you put them all, and they're usually on scholarships, so they're living in the resident halls for the most part. And so they have a whole lot more dynamic type environment that will create more problems in the form of what law enforcement has to deal with. Whereas we don't have any of that over here. And we also have another factor over here in that the campus itself sits a mile away from any major road, being 89A. So there's no real businesses up here, per se, that anybody would be traveling up towards the campus except those that live in the area. So you throw that into the mix, we're kind of off the beaten path. People coming here for an education. So you have less chance criminal activity taking place, like the Prescott campus. Again, they're central in the middle of town, right off major roads. It's a very busy college compared to what we have over here. So I'm not complaining that I don't have a lot of work, which means the campus is safer, which means the students can focus more on doing their school, doing their education thing, and I can just be here as a support and make the environment as safe as possible.
But have you had any at all circumstances that you remember that were particularly...
Here on this campus?
Yeah.
Well, we've had some things. I've had, on occasion, we've had drug issues. It's not very often, but it does happen. And there's theft that takes place. That's not terribly uncommon. But again, comparatively speaking, from the two campuses, our statistics are extremely low compared to the Prescott campus. Minor traffic accidents. We've had occasional disturbance within the classroom with a student who could become disruptive. And these are the kind of things that the teachers especially like to have us on campus, because our presence really can change the dynamics in the classroom.
In fact, I remember one time about 2 years ago when that happened in the class that I was in, and one of the students was being rude to the instructor, saying inappropriate comments and just making it seem like the class was just so boring. He couldn't stand it. So she called, and I think it was you that came over.
It was me. I know the incident you're referring to. And the instructor. But yeah, that's one of the types of situations that I think campus police helps to make the campus a better place and a safer place, because we can respond, and because we are part of the college, our response is different. Let's say if you were to call Clarkdale PD, then their response may be completely different than what ours would be, because we're an employee of the Yavapai College, and so our focus is on students, to benefit the students, to make an environment that is safe for all the students and faculty and staff. Whereas, let's say, a city law enforcement officer, he's reacting to a call, and so he doesn't know what he's going to be getting into, and his first priority is for the safety of the entire community, where my community is the college itself. So attitudes, behaviors, responses are going to be different.
How much contact do you actually have, or knowledge of what's going on in the actual education system and how it has changed since you began working, like the attitudes of the students towards education, towards the campus? I don't know, changes in that, just out of curiosity.
Well, there's definitely been a lot of changes in the college. I went to Yavapai College, started in 1977.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to tell me about that, too, because we're interested in knowing.
Yeah, it's not just employment at Yavapai College.
Right, you were also a student.
I'm a full-fledged graduate of Yavapai College.
You were a graduate, okay.
So part of the alumni.
Well, tell me about that, then.
Well, I'd have to say probably started, my motivation towards college started actually in high school. I'd have to say that I was probably a typical high school student in that I didn't really see the value of a lot of education, but I knew in the back of my mind that I needed a good education to be able to be successful, to open up doors and create opportunities. But then again, I also knew that it took money. So from high school, I went into the military thinking, well, I'll get some practical experience, and then I knew the GI Bill was out there, and this was at the tail end of the Vietnam era, so I wouldn't be going to any major wars, so that felt good. So I joined the military and got out after 3 years, and started going to college. Matter of fact, I started going to college before I actually even got out of the military. My last duty station was at Yuma Proving Grounds here in Arizona, and so I took an English class at Arizona Western, and so that was the start of my college. And then once I got out, I moved back to the Humboldt area, which is where my parents live, and I graduated from Prescott High School, and so that was my stomping grounds. And so I came back to the area that I grew up in, and I immediately enrolled at Yavapai College.
In Prescott, right?
In Prescott, yes. This was 1977.
So how was it like, the college back then?
Well, it was really different. I started taking basic college courses, psychology, math, science, computer classes. I was taking some accounting. I took a full load, so I was a full-time student because I was drawing my GI Bill. Everything back then was classroom setting.
Right.
We didn't have the internet.
No internet,
so,
no technology.
Well, matter of fact, I started taking some computer courses, and Yavapai College had what they called I believe it was called the DEC 10 computer, which at the time was one of the largest computers in the northern part of Arizona, from what I understood. And they were just getting past the punch card type computers, and took some basic computer programming using the basic DOS.
DOS operating system?
Yeah, so I mean, this was cutting edge at the time.
Yeah.
And they had the room over in the Prescott Campus where they had this computer, and it was on a big platform. It had to be very temperately controlled. So it didn't like being hot, and it didn't like being cold, and so it was very temperamental, and so it was in a very controlled environment. But that was what Yavapai College at that time was technically on the cutting edge, and it has since developed right along with as technology has changed. I've seen the college change and seems to have kept pace with what's going on in the world. I think Yavapai College really, it hasn't been left behind. Let's put it that way. And as the internet has come around, the college has been right along changing over to offering internet classes, and so there's been some major changes, and I think Yavapai College has a lot to offer.
So do you think that technology in general is positive or negative, or what do you think about it? Because, you know,
I don't think technology is positive or negative. I think it's just a fact. Technology is going to come. We don't live in a stagnant environment. Things are always changing, and it's part of, I think, the education environment to keep up with that change.
Right.
Progress is going to happen. When you look at what has happened over the past 100 years, how much we technologically have advanced, the amount of knowledge that we have now compared to what was known 100 years ago, at the rate of increase is so rapid that you're not going to stop technology. It's going to happen. So to say it's good or bad, it's irrelevant.
Well, what I was referring
There's good aspects of technology and there's bad aspects of technology.
Right, but what I was actually trying to get to is that to things like, well, computers for word processing, whereas students back in the 50s or back before the computers came along, they had to actually, you know, type it just exactly how it was going to be on the actual finished work, and now students have the option of processing it and copying and pasting and spell checking, and so maybe it affects the quality of education and the effort that the students have to put into it.
Well, I think there are some things that are lost because of technology. I think there's an assumption made that, well, we have technology and it's always going to be with us, so therefore some of the things that we did in the olden days, you know, way back in the 70s, that when I took algebra, we didn't have the Texas Instrument calculator that does all the graphs and stuff. We actually had to understand how the math progressed to produce that graph, what was the input, what was the outcome, whereas now people are learning math, they learn how to push the buttons on the calculator to get the graph, to get the results that they want to get for the test, but they don't understand the process that got them through. At least my experience, people that have been taking math don't understand the process, but they only know the results, and I think that's a mistake. That's probably hurting society, because someday it could very easily happen that what we know as to be the standard could go away for multiple reasons. I mean, we think about 9/11 and how that changed our lives. Something much larger scale could easily change the hands on the clock in change our environment. And those things that we learned way back when, that we had to understand the how and the why, now we're going to have to relearn that, and there's going to be several generations in there that won't have the ability.
Right. And going back to your Yavapai College career and Prescott, how many years did you go to Yavapai College there?
You mean to get to my degree?
Yeah.
Well, it started in 77, and then 78, opportunity came around. I entered into a business partnership with 3 other brothers, and we started a cabinet business. So at the same time, I also happened to have gotten married. So responsibilities and everything curtailed my full-time enrollment in college, but my desire to continue on with my education wasn't dampered, it was just curtailed to some degree. So I continued to take night courses and worked in a cabinet business with 3 other brothers, and eventually that business turned into a sole proprietorship, but I kept on working towards at least an AA degree, and in 1983 I graduated from Yavapai College with my AA degree, but my desires for more education didn't stop there. But unfortunately, the partnership that we have with places like NAU or ODU that we have now didn't exist back then, so I was limited. If I wanted to move on in education, I would actually have to move out of the area or spend my entire days commuting back and forth from NAU or ASU, whatever the case may have been, and it wasn't practical with working full-time and trying to support a family. So in 1989, the business became a sole proprietorship, and I decided I wanted to change my direction in life because the business was good, but it wasn't great. And I knew I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being a cabinet maker. So I wanted to continue my education. So I knew that in the military they emphasize education and providing opportunities for soldiers to be able to get educated. So I chose to go back in the military in 1989. So here it was, I've been out of the military for 12 years, and I go back in as a private, basically, starting all over. But I did manage to complete my BA while in the military in criminal justice, which leads me into law enforcement. When I got out in 1964, at the end of 1964.
1964?
I'm sorry, 1994. Yeah, 1964, I was only 9 years old.
I figured that could be.
But no, 1994. And we moved back to Humboldt again, to the Prescott area. And I tried to get in with juvenile probation since I had a degree now in criminal justice. And I did make it through the interview process, but I didn't have any practical experience working with kids or anything, or for that matter, well, with juvenile probation, working with the kids was important. I had law enforcement because my entire military career had been in military police. So I had done quite a few things in the military as far as law enforcement related. I'd done nuclear security, I'd done law enforcement within the military communities itself, I'd done military type law enforcement in a battlefield type environment. I worked U.S. Customs while in Germany for 3 years, ran a couple of customs offices. So I did a lot of different type of law enforcement things, but I hadn't actually done juvenile area stuff. So anyway, I didn't make the final cut. And so I went back into my old trade, doing cabinets, not manufacturing, but doing cabinet installations. I got my contractor's license back and started working with a contractor friend, building houses. And then I read in the paper they were looking for security personnel at Yavapai College, and I put in for that and got hired part-time. And that was in October of 1995. And then the following year they were looking for a full-time position, so I put in for that and got hired for the full-time position. And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you were first a student, and even though you didn't get your degree at Yavapai College, you were first a student and you got a lot of your education at Yavapai College, and you ended up working at Yavapai College.
Well, yeah, all my basic degree requirements were completed at Yavapai College. All the English, math, sciences, humanities, all those types of things that are basic requirements. Like when I graduated, I think it was a general education type degree from Yavapai College. It wasn't majored on any particular field because I was thinking I wanted at least a BA, and so I focused around transferable type courses opposed to just taking whatever. I mean, my original degree major was going to be in physical education, but I was having so much fun playing that I thought, this can't be right. I can't have a career where I can have so much fun, so I changed it to business areas, and so following doors that open, here I am doing law enforcement. It's not necessarily that childhood dream, but I have to admit I enjoy doing what I'm doing.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Changing the subject a little, maybe you'll agree with me that back when you were going to school in the 70s and 60s and before that, and even not so long ago, education was kind of more focused towards, well, I guess it was more of a privilege than it was a marketable product. And today, I think that education is being almost sold to people because they need that degree to get that good job. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. The emphasis on education has changed dramatically over the history of this country. When you think way back in the olden days, the educated people were obviously the ones that eventually got the positions of authority and government, and your doctors, your lawyers who went on to be senators, and they're the ones making the decisions, and people of privilege for the most part. And even in the military, the officers were the educated people, and the enlisted people were the ones that were looking to the educated people to lead them, because surely their education made them smarter and more capable.
Right.
Well, I agree. Over the years, especially after World War II, when you bring in the baby boomer generation, the attitude towards education changed dramatically, and education became something that everybody could get for the most part. And it became really affordable, I think, and a goal that people could reach out to, and especially with the changing of like junior colleges and things like that, the education level came down to more of the average person's level, where before you're looking at Ivy League type colleges, if you didn't go to Harvard or whatever, there wasn't all the universities associated with every state.
Yeah.
So education has come down to the level of the average person, and the country has also changed in that we've become more dependent upon educated type people to be able to do the jobs that are becoming more and more available. We've gotten away from a industrialized type country, and we've gotten more into a service type oriented country, with service being international level, it just being out there doing things for people, providing a service, and usually there's an education associated with that to really understand how all these different aspects of businesses work together to make things work. It's less the guy who sits there at a press who produces something on a daily basis. There's less and less of that and more service type jobs. So our education has changed dramatically, and that's going right along with the idea of technology. Our society changes, and we have to change along with it. I can't necessarily say that us getting away from an industrial type mentality is a necessarily good thing, because now if you look economically in society, we're very dependent upon foreign entities to produce the things that we depend upon on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so now you have all kinds of monetary problems because of the imbalance of what we bring into this country, and the trade deficits and stuff, because we aren't producing enough to be able to keep that balance. At least that's my perspective.
And how about, well, along the same lines, did you notice that when you were going to school, as opposed to people going to school now, that they were more focused on and interested in the stuff they were learning because they wanted to learn it, because it was interesting to them, rather than, oh, I have to do this because, it's homework and maybe I can get a C and just pass it and be done with this, that kind of attitude. Have you seen that happening within your...
Well, I can't speak for people in general. I can only speak for my own personal perspective. Well, when I was in high school, I thought that the world that I experienced in high school was it. I didn't realize the value of the things that were being taught to me, being able to learn how the rest of the world operates. And it wasn't until I got out of high school, got into the military, that I realized that I really was pretty ignorant. And so when I went back to school for the purpose of getting an education, I hungered for what was being taught to me. I enjoyed learning these things because it was all new, whereas before it was, I didn't really need that. I know how to count, I can deal with money, I can, I know basic things that I need to get along. But after experiencing the world outside of my little hometown, I realized the value of having an education, what it means to know all the different things about sciences and maths, and how this all works together, and what the value is for the person. And so, for me personally, I enjoyed the education.
You did.
And but I also understood that a lot of this was ticket punching too. But that's just part of the whole scenario.
Right. I was curious because I'm noticing that attitude that I was trying to describe in my classmates, the people around me. It seems that education has shifted so much that people are not really interested. It's like maybe, how people take so many classes these days just to get it done because they just want to get out and get that job. And maybe they didn't do that so much before, and maybe you're not the one to ask because you're not going to school right now. But I wanted to contrast what I see now to what you experienced back when you went to school.
Well, I think that attitude that you're speaking of is more prevalent in somebody who went from high school straight on into college. They haven't had the opportunity to experience the bigger world.
Yeah, I agree.
If I had my way to restructure the education system, I would make it mandatory that out of high school that there be a break, that there be some sort of structure, whether it's a military or some other type of service where the person actually has to get away from home. They're on their own, but yet they're protected in the sense that they're provided an income, they're in a controlled environment to a certain degree, they've given freedoms, but you learn a lot of the basic things about life and you interact with a larger variety of people.
I agree.
And when that happens, you wind up learning that the world is a much bigger world, and that what you've been grown up with is actually something that is a privilege. And you don't really realize something is a privilege until you have something to compare it to. And as long as you stay in that environment, you never compare it to anything. And so that's why I would like to see all young people to get away from home, but I would hate to see it be a free-for-all, because that can be destructive. Where for me, the military was a controlled environment. I had freedoms, but I also had a fairly controlled environment in that I had to be certain places, I had to do certain things. There were consequences to bad decisions, and so there was always kind of like a big brother type mentality, but not a parent, but something outside of that parent environment.
Right, and you have to be responsible for yourself, and you know that your actions are going to count. You're not just going to be...
And I knew I wouldn't starve to death because they were going to take care of me. That's why I say, different types of services that are available. It's not just military. There's other things I can't even think of right now what they are, but I would like to see the government expand those opportunities and really encourage young people to be able to do that. I think my time in the military multiple times has really helped me understand what we have in this country. And I think that's one of the reasons I really value this country. And it pains me to see people talk down this country because I've actually been to other parts of the world where people really, truly would love to be able to have the opportunities that we have here. And they would die to come here, and some do die trying to get here for what we have. And yet some people just, there's actually a pretty good sized portion of the population who don't really know what it is that they have in this country. They think the grass is greener on the other side of the mountain, and really they're living on high clover right now in this country.
Yeah, I agree with you. I myself had the opportunity to get away from home after school, after high school, And actually I came to this country from Costa Rica. I'm from Costa Rica. And that experience of getting out of my house, my parents, my family, everything that I knew, and going into a completely new environment really, really helped me realize that what I knew so far was just a little eggshell. What I assumed was the whole world was just, in fact, just a little tiny part of it. And so I agree with you that everyone should have a similar opportunity to experience something like that, because I think that it helped me have an attitude of, oh, well, I want to learn this, what I'm being taught, and that's why I'm critical of people who don't, but I guess I wasn't taking into account that their experience in life has been different than mine.
Sure. Well, you think about it, the average American who lives in the city, who's raised anymore, the kids of the newer generation after World War II, the baby boomer generation, that these kids have had wealth in a way that their parents never really knew. For the past 3, 4 generations, each generation, is for the most part, has been able to start off in life close to where their parents were at the time that they left home. They were able to enter into the workforce and start making a wage semi-compatible with what their parents were making at that time. And then their kids, after that, had been able to do pretty much the same thing. And if you think about what baby boomers and even my parents, because I'm a baby boomer, and so my parents were Depression-era parents. They actually lived through the Depression as children, and their attitude towards what is valuable and what's not is completely different than what especially my kids, who've never had anything to compare with. And my parents tried to instill into me the values that they had learned to the going through the Depression of being thrifty and saving and planning for the future, and don't put all your eggs in one basket, because you've got to think about what's going to happen further down the road. Where generations now have completely gotten away from that. And you probably coming from another country like that hasn't had quite the same wealth that this country has had. I don't know what your family situation is like. Maybe your family was pretty well off. I don't know.
Not really.
But the average American kid has so much more than most kids in the world will ever begin to know. I mean, kids growing up these days, we've shelter them to the point that we don't make demands upon them as far as valuing what it takes to make a family, such as what a parent puts into the family, working to pay the bills, to be able to buy that car, to be able to buy the house, to be able to take that vacation, to be able to give those kids their iPods or their Game Boys or whatever the case may be.
They have no idea.
They have no idea what goes into that, whereas my parents who went through the Depression, they were intimately involved with the struggles that their parents had to go through to survive.
Right.
And my parents tried to pass that on to me, but into a much lesser degree, because they were making money, they were doing much better than their parents ever did.
Right.
And so they provided for us. We had a whole lot more than they ever had growing up. And so it's not quite the same thing. The lessons aren't the same, but they tried to instill those lessons. And so I learned a lot from them, but again, not because I didn't have that same experience. My lessons are going to be less than what they have, and I've tried to pass on to my kids, and my oldest son's doing a lot better than I am now, and he's be 30 years old this year, so he can't save a nickel.
Yeah.
He spends every cent that he gets, even though I try to pass on the idea of saving and planning.
It has to do with personal experience, I think. You have to.
It has to do, personal experiences, definitely. And I think when you value what goes into making of the family, the struggles and everything, if you can incorporate that into a family, the kids will have a better understanding as they get older, but we don't teach those things. And it's, I think, two working members in a family have helped to make that more difficult too, because now we provide for our kids, we give them entertainment so that we can work.
Right.
So when they come home, they're engaged in something, basically a substitute parent, whether it's TV or Game Boy or whatever the case may be. Or so they don't learn the values that will help them when they become adults. And each generation is getting a little more difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Where all that leads us, I don't know.
I don't know. We've come a long ways from Yavapai College and the starts of it, huh? But I think it all relates because we're talking about generations and we're talking about history, trying
to... Yavapai College has moved right along with the changing of the generations, the changing technology. It's required. I mean, they have to stay competitive in the sense that they are a business. If they didn't offer the things that were going to provide the tools that the next generation needs to be able to be competitive, then the college wouldn't get the enrollment that it needs.
Right, and it's just following on what the rest of the world is doing because that's what's happening, so it has to go along with it,
Sure.
to stay up there, and I think it's doing a good job, and according to you, it sounds like it is.
Oh, I think Yavapai College is doing a great job. I'm very happy to be a part of Yavapai College. I can't say that I have any complaints about my employer at all.
Well, that's wonderful. I think that concludes this interview.